Great. And are you going to share your screen, Hannah?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
So hello, everybody. What Hannah didn't mention is I'm also a former colleague of hers and Miguelina's at New Jersey Policy Perspective. I mean, at ACNJ, but I'm now at New Jersey Policy Perspective, which is a statewide think tank focused on social and economic justice. Hannah, do you want to advance the slide there for the background? Oh wait, goals for today. We are hoping that I'm hoping at the end of today that you'll at least understand the basics of the child tax credit. Unfortunately, taxes are complicated, so I'll do my best. That you would know what resources exist to help file state and federal tax returns for 2022. And at the end of the presentation, after we're done, to help provide some feedback on tax credits. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get there, but we'll focus on the first two for now. So a bit of background on NJPP and on me. So New Jersey Policy Perspective is a state level think tank, which is focused on economic, racial, and social equity. Our specialty is the New Jersey state budget. Every year when the budget address is done, or when the hearings start for the budget, we get, that's our main season. We focus a lot on fair tax policy, as well as ensuring that the state puts in appropriate investments in for working class and middle class families. We cover a wide range of topics, and obviously NJPP has some key accomplishments like the increase in the minimum wage, the millionaire's tax, and driver's licenses for undocumented residents. And so, this is sort of where we're coming from when thinking about something like the child tax credit. Okay, next slide. Okay, what is the New Jersey child tax credit? Okay, next slide. All right, so to explain the New Jersey child tax credit, I'm going to explain a little bit about the federal child tax credit. So when people file their taxes at the federal level, they're entitled to a child tax credit per child, but that amount is actually pretty limited. And so during the pandemic, the child tax credit was expanded pretty dramatically to $3,000 for kids ages 6 to 17, and to $3,600 for families who were for kids under age 6, so 0 to 5. And they converted some of them to monthly payments. So you may remember this. There was a period where many families were receiving monthly payments of $300 during the last 6 months of 2021. And unfortunately, Congress failed to extend that. And so we're back to the pre-pandemic credit, which is $2,000 per child, but many families don't get that full $2,000. About 400,000 New Jersey families miss out on the full credit for a variety of technical reasons, which I don't need to get into. But the point is, basically, there was a great experiment to try to reduce child poverty by giving families this tax credit. And then Congress saw that it reduced child poverty dramatically and decided not to extend it anyways and to go back to the way things were. And that's where we stand now. So one policy that we're hoping to change at the state level is to try to fill in some of that gap with a New Jersey child tax credit. So that's the next slide. So this is something that I wrote a report on in 2022 and became law in 2022, which frankly is shocking, but we'll take it. So it's created in 2022, and tax filers filing this year, that is to say for the tax year that just ended, will be eligible. The credit is based on $500 credit per child ages 0 to 5, which is why it's more properly a young child tax credit than a child tax credit the way that the federal one was. And it's available for households who are earning under $80,000. So this is really targeted towards working class families who have young children, and for whom having a young child is an extreme cost, right? It's a huge cost for families in that range. And so this provides, I don't think we're under any illusions that $500 for a family is going to end child poverty. But what it does is helps those families cover some amount of the kinds of costs that can creep up on families, right? Past due bills, healthcare, transportation, like a car repair, right? Like, I think that's the idea behind some of this. And it's folded in with other kinds of tax credits like the earned income tax credit that can add up to serious dollars. And that's all folded into the annual tax return. So how much is the credit? So it's a step down sort of phase out. So if the household taxable income is 30,000 or less, then the credit per child is 500. And as the income goes up, the amount of the credit goes down. Again, this is partially to make sure that families that need the money the most are getting it. But extending it up into the higher ranges also demonstrates a commitment that all households, even households earning in the $60,000 to $80,000 range still need help, right? And frankly, households above that still need help too, but this is what we could get done in a year. And we will be advocating to try to expand the credit in the upcoming budget cycle, so we'll see how that goes. All right, next slide. So who is eligible? And this is just copied and pasted from the New Jersey Division of Taxation website. So I will be happy to share that information as well. But here are the key details. And honestly, this looks like a lot, but as tax credits go, this is like among the simplest that you could imagine. The first is you have to be a New Jersey resident for either all or part of tax year 2022. And in case you're wondering, a month is defined as 15 days of residency. So that's, if you're part of, you get it prorated based on the number of months that you're in the state. You do need a valid Social Security number or individual tax ID number. Now, an individual tax ID number is if you choose to file taxes, but you do not have a Social Security number. So this is primarily for immigrants who, both documented and undocumented, who do not have a social. They are able to file taxes. Okay, Nama, say bye-bye. It's Nama is being removed. It's almost nap time. You have to be allowed to claim the child as a deduction for the tax year for federal income tax purposes. So, there are federal rules about whether a child qualifies as a dependent. And this is a bigger issue in households where there's like split custody. The child resides in one place, but is, like where there are complex custody arrangements, that can be a challenge. So that's just flagging that. But most people can claim the child who they financially support or who lives with them, right? The child has to be age 5 or younger at the end of the tax year. So for this tax year, we're talking about by December 31st, 2022, the child still has to be age 5 or younger. So up to like 5, if their birth date is January 1st, 2023, they are still good. Have to have taxable income of $80,000 or less. And this is an important one. The tax division has deemed that you have to be filing, you can't be filing married filing separately. This is a similar restriction as exists with the earned income tax credit. We're going to try to change this, but it doesn't apply to that many people. Most people who are married file jointly or using the head of household sort of format. Okay, that was a lot of information. Happy to answer questions about that when we get to the end. But claiming it is actually really simple. You prepare your 2022 New Jersey tax return. There's a line, I think it's line 65, is where you list the number of dependents and you can claim your child tax credit amount. And then you file a return and that's it. And then when your return comes in, it should have the dollar amount for the child tax credit that you're eligible for included in the refund sort of check if you get a refund, or taken out of the tax that you owe if you still owe additional tax. So that's it. It's relatively straightforward. And unlike something like the earned income tax credit, which is very complicated rules for what a qualifying child is, this simply duplicates the rule for if a child is a dependent under federal tax rules, then they're dependent for the purposes of child tax credit. Okay, next. Resources for filing. So the biggest issue for, so this is a broader background problem, which is increasingly, we as a country and New Jersey specifically enact anti-poverty policy or, subsidy policy more broadly through the tax code, right? We create all of these tax credits. There's the earned income tax credit. There's a child care tax credit. There's a child tax credit. There's all these tax credits, and that's all fine. And it had, there's lots of reasons why this is a good idea. the biggest one is that tax departments are good at cutting people checks. They do it every year. And there's a system that already exists to verify income. You know, if we created a new program from scratch today and said, we're going to write checks to families with kids under age 6, you'd have to create a whole income verification system where you say, okay, we need your paychecks, we need your stubs, we need all this. The tax department already does that, right? So tax policy is a really easy way, in a lot of ways, to try to get money out to people. But there's a problem, which is that you have to file in order to get the money. And filing is a big obstacle, particularly for low-income households. Low-income households file at the lowest rate, okay? And their financial lives are frequently more complex, right? My taxes are easy, right? I have a W-2 that comes from one employer. All the taxes, the withholding, that's all taken care of. My taxes are relatively straightforward, right? If I switched jobs 2 or 3 times and I work part-time and I have a cash gig on the side, and also, you know, like I moved mid-year, right? All of those kinds of changes make taxes more complicated, and it creates additional obstacles, right, to filing. So here are some examples. 1, taxes are confusing generally. I mean, I described this as a relatively simple credit, and you saw that slide with all the bullet points on it, and I had to make the font smaller so it all fit, right? Like, that's the reality, is that taxes are confusing. So it's hard for somebody to say, just like on a whim, okay, great, I'm going to file my taxes this year, especially if I've never done it before, right? So that's step 1, is taxes are confusing. 2 is lots of people are below the income threshold. If you earn less than $10,000 for a single or $20,000 for a married household, you do not have to file taxes. So to tell people that not only you can file, you should file taxes because you could get money back from the government, that's a challenging argument to have to make, because when most people think file your taxes, they think that means send money to the government that you need to pay, right? So that leads into this third one, which is mistrust and fear of government, right? We're talking about folks who are often on the wrong end of government, right? People who are, especially folks who are immigrants, folks who are from Native communities, who have had long-standing, tension with government. And for, I think generally speaking, there's mistrust and fear that government can lead to other consequences, right? What if I have informal cash income? I do some babysitting on the side and I didn't claim it. What if I'm, I have I live in Newark. Everyone here has a side business that they're making some money from. They're selling some cookies and, they sell coquito at Christmas time. And like,
when somebody's trying to help you make peace.
Right. So, and I think there's also concern about prior tax obligations. This is something that comes up in research routinely, is that people are worried that, oh no, the government's gonna come after me because I didn't pay taxes in whatever, 2016, and I have a lien against me or something. So, there are additional obstacles to filing. And so the people who need the money the most are the least likely to get it. And we saw this with the child tax credit at the federal level. Families earning over $100,000 were most likely to say in survey data that they received the child tax credit checks. Families earning less than $25,000 were least likely, right? So it's a concern. And so like the biggest thing we can do in order to ensure that these dollars get to the people who need them is to encourage filing. So how do we do that? Next slide. There are resources available for folks to file. The IRS has a list of free tax prep sites. And if you go to that website, you can actually see, and I guess, Hannah, do you think you can click on that and we can see the site? I'm worried that it'll send you, it won't show up on your shared screen. But it's, if you go and you put in like Newark zip code, you'll see, so if you put in, I'm 07105, or you can put in ACNJs, whatever, once 07102, yeah. So you'll see it lists free tax prep sites, the dates that they're open, the language they speak, the hours, whether they require an appointment, and a phone number. So if you work directly with clients, you can help them by, looking up resources here. And it's, in Newark, I think the bigger providers are probably New Jersey Citizen Action and United Way, but there are a lot of VITA providers. These are volunteer tax prep, but they have a variety of options now. I think especially during COVID, there was some adaptation where you could like drop off a packet and complete most of it and then do a phone interview. And then there's the other method is if you earn less than $73,000, you're eligible for free tax prep through the IRS. Now, unfortunately, the IRS provides it through like contracted firms. So like whatever Tax Act and H&R Block and TurboTax and all of them. But the best way to access those is through the IRS's own website, which is its free file page. So I included the link here, but I will say that the free file option is probably the best for people who speak English as their native language and are familiar a little bit with the tax system, because otherwise there's, the likelihood of error is high, and the more steps there are, the less likely it is that someone will complete the filing process. And I want to flag here that you have to file your state taxes, not just the federal taxes, in order to get the state credit. So most of these providers will file both your state and your federal, but it's important to ask because both are required. Okay, so those are the resources that are available. And then next slide. Okay, so why should people file? There's a lot of money in tax credits, as I mentioned. The earned income tax credit, child tax credit, child care tax credit, and you may have heard a lot about the Anchor program, which is providing property tax relief. You have to apply separately for that that relief, but also it's easier to get the money if you file your taxes. And a completed tax return is helpful in other income verification contexts. There are lots of areas where having a filed, signed tax return is effective for income verification, and so you don't have to jump through other kinds of hoops. So there are lots of benefits to filing, but I think it is hard to persuade somebody who has not filed to say you should file your taxes this year, right? Like it's a difficult argument to have to make. So one thing that we're encouraging the tax division at the state to do is to send out mailings to people, especially folks who are enrolled in benefit programs like SNAP, like child care subsidy, to say like, hey, did you know that you're eligible for all these tax credits? Here's a list of, here's the closest free filing tax site available to you, here you go. But that's been a difficult process as well, because the tax offices are not like historically in the business of giving money back, right? Their goal is to bring in as much money to the state as possible. So telling them they should market tax filing and tax credits to people is a bit of a push for them. All right, so I think we're almost at the end there. What do I have left? I think that's it. Yes, so I will leave it there for questions and feedback for, yes.